Hello and welcome to an all-star break edition of Puck Talk with Pickens and Turner. I'm Dave Turner along with Pat Pickens. We have a great show for you today. We're going to start with some awards as well as some other. No, I know I want to do it a little differently. I want to tease the show just because there's so many like individual topics, but I should have done it off the top.
You can do it. Here, all right.
Hello and welcome to an all-star game. All-star game.
All-star break.
Yeah, when you don't get the first one, then it goes downhill. All right.
I know, always.
Yep.
I don't know why that happens.
It always does. Even when we're trying to do taped opens for the ESPN games, it happens. All right.
Yeah, I know.
Hello and welcome to an all-star break edition of Puck Talk with Pickens and Turner. I'm Dave Turner along with Pat Pickens. We have an action-packed show for you today. Of course, we're going to talk a little bit about the Dennis Wideman incident. We're going to talk about suspensions for not showing up to the all-star game. That one will be interesting. We'll talk about our favorite storylines of the first 50 or so games here. We'll give out our awards with about 32 games, give or take, to play for each team. We'll revisit our playoff picks, which could get a little scary. And then we have a couple of other things there that we'll get into. But, Pat, we'll start off with the Dennis Wideman hit on the referee there, because this, to me, I know that they're trying to, put the rhetoric out there, and they're trying to make it seem like it wasn't on purpose. But, Pat, what does this look like to you?
Well, you're going to differ on this, I guess. So, to me, it looked like a woozy player who happened to fall into the linesman. And for what, maybe I'm giving Dennis Wideman the benefit of the doubt because he's had a pretty clean career over his history. He's not considered a dirty player per se. Answer me this: why is he going to take out his frustrations on the linesman? And what? Because he just got checked. If you look at it, I mean, I said this on Twitter, and it's true. It's how I feel. That first off, this is classic sports where the NHL gets. What are the two topics the sports world is talking about in terms of the NHL this weekend? They're not talking about the All-Star game, not talking about skills. They're talking about John Scott and the scathing Players Tribune column, which we could get to later, and Dennis Wideman's attack of the linesman. To me, it looked like I said, it looked like an accident. I mean, shit. But now he's having a hearing. Now he's been suspended indefinitely. I mean, I saw his hands go. I mean, it just seemed like it all happens fast, and he's woozy. And maybe I'm wrong in this, but I thought it was an accident.
Let me ask you this, though, and this is, to me, a couple of the reasons why, it doesn't look accidental. He does extend his arms. Mm-hmm. It didn't seem like he was like, oh, wow, let me try to get out of the way. Here's my question, Pat. If you're an NHL player, and you know that hitting an official is a major no-no, and you run into official, aren't you going to say sorry, try to pick him up?
Well, he did. He said he did.
Not from what we see with the video. I mean, maybe I have to watch it again, but
no, he said after the fact that he apologized to the linesman, and but tell me this, Dave, what pent up aggression does he have on a linesman?
I don't know, but I mean, what better to me? It just doesn't look. Just the way he came in and kind of extended his arms, it doesn't make much sense to me as to how that would be an accident. I mean, if you run into someone as an accident, it looks awkward. This didn't look awkward. This looked like he was just like, all right, get the hell out of my way. But here's the caveat on this, though. If there's people who are saying that he had a concussion, why the hell did he play in the rest of that game then?
Yeah.
And that's my thing. Also, if you're the Flames, wouldn't you be smart? And if you realize this happened, wouldn't you sit him and use the concussion excuse automatically, just so that you're not going to lose one of your top 6 guys for however many games?
Dave, tell me this though: if this is such an egregious front on an official, an attack of it, why didn't he get thrown out of the game? I mean, if the linesman or if everybody who was watching the game, I mean, the linesman knows what happened to him. Why does he think? That this was an act? Why wasn't he given a penalty? Why wasn't he given a game misconduct for assault on, or for linesmen have the ability to influence penalty calls and affect them. If this was such a glaring and obvious attack on an official, he should have been thrown out of the game.
Yeah, he should have been, but how many times have we seen things happen this year where guys don't get thrown out when they should, or times when guys might get a misconduct and then maybe it doesn't really make sense. How many 5-minute major penalties have we seen rescinded by the league this year because it wasn't done right? So, I mean, to me, to expect that the officiating would have made sense with this being correct or not, I think that's a whole different issue on its own because maybe they weren't sure what to do, or
if you have any doubt, throw the guy out of the game. If you really think that this was a malicious attack on an official, I mean, you throw him out of the game, give him, then you could suspend him right off the. I mean, it just seems like such the perfect NHL thing to do. Oh, well, we have to make sure we have to get, have his hearing, let due process play out. And then, and now they're stuck in between again. They watched him run into the official, extend his arm. To me, this is why I think it looked this way, because it feels like, to me, Weidman caught him out of the corner of his eye after the fact and put his hands up to not make things worse. Like when you see someone coming at you, at the last second, you put your hands up to defend yourself, or for whatever reason. It's just human nature. So, I mean, that's what my vantage point was. But if this is such a malicious attack on an official, the official should at least penalize him.
Yeah, I agree with that. But to me, I'm watching it right now as we do this. And yeah, he's woozy when he comes out of the corner. But you watch the way that he finishes.
He's standing at the wrong bench, it looks like.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just the way. I mean, maybe he thought he was a predator. I mean, that could be. And maybe, that's just a dirty hit in general. But to me, I don't think it was accidental. I think he saw someone in the way that was not wearing red. I don't even think, to be honest, I would assume he probably didn't even know if it was a ref because it is right by the natural bench. But I don't think it was accidental. I don't think he was trying to get out of the way. I think he saw someone in front of him that was not wearing red in his mind, even when he was a little woozy, and he cross-checked him.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe that was the case. But, I mean, like you said, in that case, then it's still an accident, though, because he's not cross-checking an official. He's hitting a guy who's wearing a different sweater than him.
Mm.
So,
it might end up being a gray area. It might be, but
he's going to have a hearing, and we're going to get to the. I mean, it sounds like they're going to throw the book at him. But again, for me, it's just one of those things that naturally the sports world jumps on because it's an attack on an official is the perception. But like, there's so many other things happening around the. I mean, it's just. I don't know whether it's the NHL's ineptitude to handle these things, or whether it's just the sports world only jumps to the NHL when something stupid and bizarre happens.
Oh, of course. I mean, that's just how it goes. But speaking of things that are a little bit
stupid and bizarre,
we have suspensions for two of the best players in the National Hockey League, Jonathan Toews, Alexander Ovechkin, both being suspended because they are not attending the All-Star game. I'm going to actually get outside the NHL for this one. I'm going to go with a little bit of good old Pops. Greg Popovich with the Spurs. He likes to sit his players, especially on national TV games. And
they win them anyway.
Yeah, and then they win them anyway. In this case, it's the players saying, you know what, I want to relax a little bit, or maybe I am a little bit, because everyone's kind of banged up. They don't want to go, and you know what? I think I get it that if you make it optional, it could get to the point where all of the players who were chosen leave, especially because Ovechkin and Toews,
these are the faces of the league.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big loss in terms of the star power, and I understand why they do it. Why that they have to try to levy suspensions because they don't want guys pulling out. Look, every single New England Patriot who is supposed to be in the Pro Bowl has pulled out.
But that's why the game's a joke. That's why the event is a joke.
Do we want that for the NHL? It's hard because I really think suspending someone over an exhibition game is ridiculous. That you're going to impact meaningful games perhaps over nothing. Really, if you think about it, it's nothing. Mm-hmm. I get it. It's a chance to grow the game, yada yada. That kind of thing. But at the end of the day, it's about winning championships. And if you're going to hurt a team's chances to do that in any way because of what happens in a exhibition game, I'm not a fan of that.
Here's my take on it. I think I'm okay with it, with the NHL suspending, because if you're bad enough, if you're banged up, sick, etc. enough to miss the All-Star game, then miss a regular season game and come back. Here's what I'll say. I mean, I think whether or not he's suspended or not, I think this move from Ovechkin is a sign of maturity. Is just a grown up acting like a grown up. That, sure, the fans voted me the Metropolitan Division captain. Sure, I like to go to the All-Star game and make a spectacle and party all weekend and have all. But look at what he's choosing to do. And maybe this is the organization. Maybe Barry Trotz has had some sway this year. But the Capitals are headed to big things this year, and for once, it's to me it's a breath of fresh air for Ovechkin that he says, hey, my team, the 82 game campaign, even if I miss one game from suspension, that this season is more important than me being at the All-Star game. Because, I mean, if you watch him, he makes a spectacle. And I don't, listen, the All-Star game is a spectacle, is what it is. We all remember the sunglasses in Montreal, and we all remember the the breakaway challenge with him. And if you look at some of his All-Star game memories and things, I mean, I'm not saying that's the reason why the Capitals haven't won in the past. But Ovechkin pulling out, with a nagging injury and taking, he's going to get an extra week off because of the suspended game. I mean, that's going to be huge for them as they come into the playoffs, especially as they're going to be the favorite and as they're going to, approach this potentially points and wins record in NHL history. For me, it's a sign of Ovechkin growing up here.
Yeah, I actually agree with you on that one, and I think that it's a noble thing to do here. Why not? I mean, if you expect to be playing hockey into June, especially the way he plays, with the amount of speed and the physicality that he knows is coming for, what they believe is probably somewhere around 20-something games. I mean, that's in their mind, they expect to be there. So if you're Alexander Ovechkin, of course you have that right to do that. And sure, does it take away from the All-Star game? Okay. But to me, I'm never going to hate on a player for doing something that probably benefits a team even more than them. Because, maybe he was the me guy that wanted to show up and wow everyone, especially in the 3-on-3 where he could sit there and just dangle past people. I do agree with you on that one for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of Taves, guys played a lot of hockey over the last year. Plus, I mean, I'm not okay with James Neal taking over for him just to get, because you got to, especially since they probably could have, could have gotten Artemi Panarin in there for the Central Division. Mm-hmm. But I don't begrudge him for doing that either. It's the same thing. That there are more meaningful games to be played.
Yes.
For Blackhawks are at the top of the Central Division right now, and they're focusing on deep playoff run, and it's more important that they get have not just healthy but refreshed too. It's more than just health, because
mentally refreshed too.
It's yeah. I mean, that's what I mean. We all go at it pretty hard. I mean, think about it. The All-Star break comes here, where the All-Star break hits this point where you're more than halfway through the season. In terms of these teams, we said it. Some have played as many as 52 games, I believe, and or 50. Chicago's played 53 actually. So you played more than half a season. You play most of those games are back to back 3 and 4 3 games a week, 4 games a week in some cases. I mean, you get the opportunity, especially like I said for Tays, who's had abbreviated off seasons the last 4. When you look at, they won the Cup in 13, they went to the conference finals in 14, 7th game of the conference finals in 14. Then they win the Cup last year. I mean, the guy just probably needs a break here. And, but again, I'm okay with the league suspending only because it's a deterrent for everybody from doing it. Like you said, we want, you want the All-Star game to be the All-Star game. You don't want the very good, and it's good for Kuznetsov because to replace Ovechkin, because Kuznetsov is, I mean, look at it, he's the number 1 point producer on the best team in the league right now. So good for him for getting on the stage. But you want to see the stars, and especially this year more than ever, especially because there's fewer players in terms of the rosters, in terms of each division, in terms you look at Crosby's not going to be there. You look at now Ovechkin and Taves. I mean, those are 3 of the biggest stars in the sport right now. And what if Tyler Seguin just said, okay, I don't want to go. You make it a deterrent for these guys to not be there. And that way, if 2 guys want to pull out and get a suspension, that's fine. But you still have, what do we have? 40 guys who are stars who are still going to be there to represent the game and create this spectacle and this excitement, because it's a big event for the league.
It is, but you know what this really all boils down to, though. If all these players are going to keep pulling out, we're going to see John Scott be a perennial All-Star. That's what it comes down to. All right, let's not get it. I
was gonna say, well, I could go on and off about
I can't do it
about the All-Star game in general, because the league has so, the irony of suspensions for Ovechkin and Taves is that every 3rd year the league doesn't have an All-Star game, whether it's the Olympics, whether it's lockouts, whether it's you name it. There have been breaks, or there have not been All-Star games, to the point where we went 3 years between All-Star games, when there was one in 2012 and then the one last year. So and yet the league is, and now, like you said, John Scott's in the game, and now this year all of a sudden the league has a conscience about how important the All-Star game. I mean, I get it. Like I said, big event for the league. They want to put their best face on, but I'm okay with both guys sitting out.
Absolutely.
And I'm okay with the suspensions.
Well, we're probably going to talk about some of the same names here, but let's pick the big 5 awards here. Of course, there's still some time, and a lot can change. The Hart, the Vezina, the Norris, the Calder, and the Jack Adams. To me, those are the ones that really kind of have the ability to really pick them without it kind of getting a little weird. So
before we start, I'm going to throw Nick Backstrom in to crash the party for the Selke Trophy.
You know what? I agree. He's so underrated in that regard. He's absolutely. I agree. He belongs.
Yeah, maybe instead of like a Patrice Bergeron, it's a final. Not that he's not a great defensive center, but I'd like to see Backstrom in as a finalist. But so okay. So we even touched on the Selke Trophy, so that's great.
No lady ping today. We'll start with the Hart here. Pat, who's your pick?
It's got to be Patrick Kane, just because he's going to win the Art Ross Trophy anyway. He's been such a dominant force offensively for the Blackhawks. Like I said, we talked about how weary they are and how worn out and how difficult it's been for that team. But look at they closed the break. Not with wins in 12 of their last 15 or something along those lines, or 13 of 15, somewhere in that ballpark. They're atop the Central Division again, even after all the – and why? Because Patrick Kane and his point streak, it gripped the league. It was one of the best storylines of the league. Say what you want to about him and his personal life, and we don't want to get into it. We set that, it's over. But the Blackhawks middled about basically the first couple months of the season, and then Kane put him on his back the last maybe 2 months of the year. And Corey Crawford deserves some significant recognition. We'll get to that in a minute, I guess. But but 13 wins in their last 16 games before the All-Star break, and Patrick Kane was a big part of it. So he was my MVP for the start.
Yeah, to me, I always look at this award, and I think I always take it kind of to an extreme because I hate that it becomes. I think I hate that it becomes all the awards for the most part become like the most glamorous statistics or the guy who just looks the part over necessarily in this case someone who might be the most valuable to their team.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting, you mentioned Corey Crawford. I'm going to go with another Corey. If the Devils make the playoffs, I think Corey Schneider. To be quite honest. I mean, you look at this team. All right, you take Patrick Kane off the Blackhawks, they're probably still a playoff team, at least if they
they proved it last year. They were.
Yeah, exactly. You take Corey Schneider off of the Devils, this team would be probably finishing second in the lottery behind Edmonton, of course, because Edmonton wins it every year. But no, in all truthfulness, you look at the way he's played. I mean, he has almost a 9.29 save percentage. His goals against is really, really good too. Mm-hmm. Just the way that he has been the rock for this team. And look, if they don't make the playoffs, I wouldn't vote for him because I think that the value has to be there in terms of what you were able to accomplish. So if they're a 10th place team, who cares? Yeah. But I really feel that if he's able to backstop them all the way to the playoffs, you have to give him credit for that because, I mean, who could you make? I mean, he would be so valuable to them if you look at the way they play and their lack of goal scoring, the fact that they're not great defensively. I think he deserves a lot of credit.
You know who I think he gets a little underrated too, which is remarkable because of the market. He's not as flashy as some goaltenders. He's not as staid as Henrik Lundqvist is in this market. But like you said, where would they be without Corey Schneider right now? I'm also going to, throw in a plug for Sidney Crosby, just because as he's kind of awakened here, so have the Penguins back into a playoff spot. So let's, acknowledge that Sid's. I mean, by the end of the year, I think Sid will probably be nearing Kane and Ben and all those guys at the top of the scoring list. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case and they get in the playoffs, this will almost be his finest season.
Yeah, I think you could absolutely make the case that he might be more deserving this year if things continue the upswing that they have for them than he's ever been. But all right, moving on, the Vezina Trophy.
I assume you're going to go with Schneider again too for that.
In some ways, I didn't want to. I still think that might be Braden Holtby's trophy this year, though his numbers are actually pretty much even to not quite as good as Schneider at the moment. It changes day by day because all their numbers are so low. I still think it's going to end up being Holtby. I think his numbers will kind of speak to it. And for some reason, the fact that he's going to put up all the wins, people just like that, I guess, too, for some reason.
The guy's got 5 regulation losses and 39 starts this year.
Yeah. He's been really, really good. You just watch the way he plays, and he's just turning into such an elite goaltender, just every, day in and day out, and especially because he has, some of the playoff experience under his belt already. I mean, you're just seeing this guy ascend to the top. I mean, look, Henrik Lundqvist was the best goaltender last year that if you asked anyone around the league, now he's third in that division. Yeah, or Carey, but I'm talking in that division.
Oh, in the Metro, yeah, okay.
Now he's third, and that's just it's amazing about how things change so quickly. But I'm still gonna go Braden Holtby there.
Okay. You know what? I'm gonna go. I just name dropped him, and I'm gonna say it. I think it's gonna be Corey Crawford, because I don't think Holtby's gonna play as often as he did. He had to last year because Holtby played 73 games last year.
Yeah.
Plus every game, he missed one playoff game with a I think it was a sickness he had. So he played 13. He played 86 games last year, and that's talk about a lot of hockey. I mean, plus they're going to run away. They're already running away with the Metro, and it's just whether or not they want to try and reach that record for points, the Canadiens' record for points in a single season, or the Red Wings' record for wins in a single season. And Crawford and that team's going to be in a hunt and a fight for the division with Dallas hot on their heels, and the rest of the division's pretty close there. So I think Crawford's been fantastic. He's got a .931 right now, 2.14, and like I said, against with most of the games coming against the high-flying Western Conference teams, like Arizona, like obviously not in the same division, but like Dallas. There's no shortage of high-octane offensive teams out west. So when it all shakes out, Crawford's going to get it only because I think Trotz is going to move more in line of giving Holtby some breaks here. But I think Snyder has to be in the conversation too, like you said, especially if the Devils make the play or get near the playoffs, and Peter Mrazek too, who is suddenly emerging as
he's been really, really good.
Yeah, and can't forget Roberto Luongo too, because he's been a rock back there with a 930 save percentage, on a team that is in first place too. So I think Luongo will be in the. I'm going to take Crawford though.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, it's so close now that's what's going to make it fascinating. Is that it's going to change by the day as the numbers change and guys make big saves that kind of stick in your mind. Is going to keep changing. But
the Norris Trophy, we should all agree.
I think we're both going to agree on this one, right, Pat?
Well, go ahead.
It's got to be Erik Karlsson. There's no way.
See, but I'm going to predict that he will win it. My pick would be.
But you know who I want to pick though, right? You know who's We
both want to pick Ryan Suter.
I want to pick Roman Josi.
Do you?
I love watching him play. Oh, he's so good and he doesn't get the credit.
I know, I agree, but it's to me, Ryan Suter has always got to be in the conversation.
But yeah, I mean, he comes off the ice twice a game, so
Yeah, I mean, he's got 31 points. He's tied for 10th amongst defensemen. He plays more minutes than everybody. I mean, John Klingberg probably deserves to be in the conversation.
He does,
because he's got 40 points and he's playing for Dallas. But I mean, the problem is with this award that it always goes to one of the highest scoring defensemen, which is fine because usually the highest scoring defenseman also log the big minutes. I mean, I think Drew Doughty is as valuable as any defenseman there is, and I think it's time he get in the conversation here, even despite the fact he only has 28 points here. They're in first place because he kind of sets that tone for that team. I mean, I really want Ryan Suter to do it because he, like I said, he's logged more minutes than anybody over the last 5 years. I fear you're going to be right though with Karlsson. I mean, if I had a vote, it'd be for Suter, though.
Yeah, I could certainly see that one. To me,
you would vote for you want Josi.
Yeah, I mean, again, he is a minus player in terms of plus minus. I'd have to crunch the advanced stats to really say that, but just from the eye test, and I do watch a decent amount of Nashville Predator, just because.
Yeah.
Why not? I just think he's so tremendous in both ends, and he's really kind of taking the torch.
Well, he made Seth Jones expendable.
Exactly. I mean, that kind of speaks to him being so good now. Maybe it's not his year. I think he's only going to get better. To me, the problem with Erik Karlsson is, he's so good offensively, but he is not a great defensive player.
Yeah.
And so what you're saying is whoever scores the most points is the winner. And, not that he's dreadful defensively, but he certainly is nowhere near even where, say, Suter is, or Brent Seabrook, Duncan Keith,
Shea Weber.
Shea Weber. Even Victor Hedman, I think, is better defensively than him. In some regards. I've always kind of had a point of contention with this award, but it's probably going to Karlsson, but that would not be my vote.
Yeah, Brent Burns probably in the conversation too. A minus player who basically, if you're going to give the Norris Trophy to Brent Burns, you might as well just give it to Paul Martin, because if Brent Burns without Paul Martin on that back end is a defensive liability. But I digress. Let's move on, Dave. Well, before we start getting angry, the Calder Trophy was supposed to be, I believe they probably started engraving Connor McDavid's name on it in September. They're going to have to take his name off it. Dave, who's going to be your pick?
This is an interesting one. And again, his numbers aren't going to quite stack up. But if you want to look at it in terms of actual impact, Shane Gostisbehere has been unbelievable. I mean, I don't know how much, if you're listening from other parts of the country, that you've gotten to see him, because let's be honest, people are not watching a lot of Flyer games unless your team is playing them.
Yeah, or
he
unless
is
you're the Flyer fan.
unbelievable what he's done for this team. Sure, his game is not exactly as well-rounded yet. He's going to make major strides defensively in his day, but what he's able to do on the power play and in the offensive zone is unbelievable, considering that this team has had goal-scoring issues, and they're not very good outside of him and
goal.
Giroux. Yeah. He has been electric. I mean, he's made some plays that you go, how old is this kid? Oh, my God. I mean, he really is showing that he's going to be a star. And you know what? I wouldn't mind giving it to him just because he's made such an impact already.
Yeah, I would side with you because he's been such, like you said, he has been such a he basically got the Flyers back into a playoff position where, like you said, they were one of the least relevant teams basically for the first 2 months of the season, and then or month and a half basically, and then they called this guy up, and all of a sudden they are, they're approaching a playoff spot. They're getting back into it. Like you said, he's made their power play better. He's made their breakouts go a lot more smoothly. I agree that he's the guy, but I got to throw Dylan Larkin in that conversation too. The guy's plus 24. He's tied for the lead in points on the Red Wings as a 19-year-old. So, he's not even going to be 20 until July 30th. So for a guy of 19 years to walk into one of the first off, their original six. Secondly, they play in Hockey Town. Thirdly, it's they've made the playoffs every year. Going back before he was born, they made the playoffs every year. And now he's tied for the lead in points in a year where Datsuk's been hurt, in a year where, Brad Richards has been up and down and injured and stuff. And, that team, we all expected them to regress here. And they've had, we already mentioned Mrazek because they're juggling him and Howard in goal. And the injuries they've had and the difficulty they've had. And yet, why are they floating right along, probably going back to the playoffs, maybe even with home ice advantage in the first round? It's because Dylan Larkin is plus 24, has 33 points at 15 goals, and it's basically, come out of the woodworks from nowhere to doing this at the NHL level. So I agree with you. Gostisbehere is the pick, but I would be okay with Dylan Larkin too.
Yeah, I actually agree with you that too. Larkin's been incredible. He's doing some things. I actually, believe it or not, when I drive home from work sometimes, I'll end up with a lot of Red Wings games on the radio just for whatever reason, and listening to their guys and listening to other people when they'll interview them talk about Dylan Larkin. It's incredible what people have to say about him already, that he's just so, universally respected for already kind of playing with that Red Wing way to him. I almost liken him in some ways to like a Kawhi Leonard in the NBA, where he's this good player that comes into a great system and it only makes him better because of where he is. I mean, that's just kind of what it's going to be for him. And
not quite to the Kawhi Leonard level yet.
No, but I mean, kind of similar. But
yeah.
All right, so the last one we'll do here is the Jack Adams. I guess there's an easy answer to this one, perhaps, and maybe there's a bunch that are dark horses that could change if their teams finish somewhere. Yeah. Is this an easy one for you, or do you kind of have to think a little bit?
Well, that depends. Is Mike Sullivan in the conversation?
That was actually going to be a question I was going to have, because if he gets them into one of the seeded spots in the Metro, I think he has to be considered. I really do.
My pick is Gerard Gallant because
I had a feeling that's where you were going.
He's been, they hired him. And he came out of, I guess he came out of the American League. And he's just been such a calming influence on a team that is so tumultuous in terms of age and differential. And he's just a calming influence. He's pushing all the right buttons. They made the decision to send down Dave Bolin. And now, obviously, Bolin's injured. And it paid off, where they won, all those games in a row. And and they're atop the Atlantic by 5 points at the break. And I think Gerard Gallant's got to get a lot of the credit. I know Luongo's been great, and I know, but you look at the combos they put together in terms of lines. They're doing it. I keep coming back to it. They're doing it without Nick Bjugstad. For whatever reason, Yager with Huberdeau and Barkov has been awesome, and I know they have a lot of veterans that are leading the way, but I think Gerard Gallant's the guy.
I can't disagree with you because he has done a tremendous job. I mean, I'm going to go with one where the caveat also here is if they make the playoffs. Mm-hmm. But I've liked him for a long time. I thought he gets the most out of his roster. That would be Dave Tippett with the Arizona Coyotes.
Yeah.
I just think that, especially the year that they went to the conference finals and other years where they've been competitive, where they haven't really had much on their roster, I think he gets the most out of his players. And this was pretty much, year one for them in terms of all the young kids coming up. And look where
this was Austin Matthews' year for them. I mean, let's be real. Because, he's from Scottsdale, and that was the perfect fit. And now all of a sudden they're in a playoff spot.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? They've kind of fallen off a little bit lately, but before that they had been hot. Yeah. So I think that they certainly could pick it up here and find their way into a playoff spot. I just really have always admired the job that Dave Tippett does because he is not dealt the same hand. Whether it's A, not having the home ice advantage that other teams have, B, not knowing where you might be coaching in terms of, where your team is going to be in next year. They still don't necessarily know what building they're going to be in.
Yeah, financial advantages that they don't have.
Exactly.
You want to talk about even probably the most even-keeled in terms of, just everything is fine. Everything is good. He keeps his guys on an even plane. He's very soft-spoken, but, was not afraid, obviously, to crack the whip. And, you look at what he's done with – he's been in the conference finals twice. They had it with Dallas, I think it was 2008, with a team that came out of nowhere completely. So, like you said, I think that's a good pick there by you. For Tippett, I could see Gallant. I could see, Jeff Blashill, although who knows. And the other thing is, if Anaheim gets back into it, this is probably Bruce Boudreau's best year in terms of pushing buttons.
Yeah, but I think some of that you can also say is, what happened the beginning of the year. So I don't think he'll be in the thing. I think he's I don't think he's the problem with this team, but I also don't know if you can exactly pat him on the back for where they might be going. But all right, Pat, let's we have a couple more topics here.
I don't want to.
I know. We have to revisit our finals picks, which for me, speaking of the Ducks, I had picked the Ducks and the Washington Capitals. So I'm looking really smart and really, really stupid all at the same time, which is, I guess, that's 50-50. I'm normal. I'm average. So
par for the course for you, I guess.
Yes. I'm going to keep the Caps just because why not? They've certainly been the best. For me, I've thought about it.
It's an even year. It's an even year.
Yeah, I wanted to. I don't want to do it.
You're going to do it, though.
No, I'm going to pick Chicago.
Are you?
Yeah, especially because the goaltending has been so good. Excuse me. It adds another dimension to them. Excuse me. That if they can, win games 2-1 a little bit easier.
Yeah. Plus, it looks like they're going to get if they end up the first spot in the Central, they're going to end up with the lesser of two evils matchup in the first round because my thought is LA in the West now, but they're going to play. Although if they end up getting Colorado in the first round, that could. We'll see. I'm going to stick with you and say Washington in the East. I like what Florida's done, but I think they're ripe for an upset just because of how much can Luongo do it in the postseason. If they get Boston in the first round, can you imagine what Boston's their fans up there are gonna be merciless on Roberto Luongo, and he probably still hears the chants and the cat calls from the 2011 final. So I'm gonna pick I think this Washington team is different. Everybody I talk to says Well, okay, Washington, yeah, fine, great. They're doing it in the regular season. They always do it in the regular season. But I mean, Justin Williams is going to be a big factor. They have depth in scoring, and their defense is really, really good. And Braden Holtby is really, really good. So I'm going to take Washington in the East, and you know what? I'm going to take LA in the West, just because it's an even year. And just because, they're floating right along. And when they get going in the playoffs, they're tough to stop. Part of that is to put the kibosh on LA just because, the minute I pick you, you're going to hell. So I'm going to say Washington and LA, though. But I think that's probably going to happen.
Yeah, I could see that. I think the best thing would be if we can get another Blackhawks-Kings final. And then what if we can get the Rangers and the Capitals in the final? If the Rangers end up being a wild card.
That could happen. That could happen.
Because those
Pittsburgh.
Yeah, those teams play. Even Pittsburgh, Washington would be glorious. But I think any of those combinations of those three teams would be really, really good. But
yeah.
All right, Pat. Before we break here and enjoy our couple days off. No hockey to be played, which is weird. I went to go check scores just out of habit last night. And I'm like, oh, that's right. There's no games tonight.
Yeah.
Let me go look at some college hockey. I actually did that, believe it or not.
Huh.
Maybe I have a problem. Maybe, but
no, you just have the top seed in the country where you went to college.
Yes, that is true. The Quinnipiac Bobcats are playing very well. But you know what though? They were a number one team last time, and they lost to Yale in the final. So we'll see what happens.
In people's straws, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay.
So just before we get out of here, let's just go with a couple storylines here. What is your favorite storyline of the year thus far?
I think we both kind of agree with it in terms of these teams that emerged. These kind of sleeper picks that emerged. I was high on Florida last year, and they fell just short of the playoffs. But watching them come out of the woodworks, watching Carolina come out of the woodworks, watching the Devils come from nowhere, watch Arizona come from nowhere. Just watching watch Carolina be much improved and hard to play against. I mean, if Carolina had any goaltending whatsoever, they'd be in a playoff spot right now. Which is ironic because they traded Anton Khudobin, who probably could be their starter at the moment. But no, I mean, I like that these kind of teams have come out of nowhere and get a little new blood, get a little fresh blood, get a little excitement. Although it hasn't really happened in Carolina yet, so let's go, people. I mean, 10,000 people per game. I mean, you guys won the Stanley Cup. It wasn't that long ago. It was still in this new NHL. 10 years has only been. I know they've been they haven't made the playoffs since 2009, and I guess everyone loves a winner. But this team is right in the playoff hunt here. They're 2 points out of the third spot in the Metro. So got to get the Hurricanes. I guess I know the demographics are different, but I guess they're probably still hung up on the Panthers just because of the state pride.
Yeah, that is a little bit of an issue with them.
The football Panthers, I should say.
I'm going to kind of agree with you on this one. I absolutely, these teams coming in the woodwork to be good. I'm going to take it a step further and just talk about the parity that's in this league. Mm-hmm. That other than right now, I mean, I guess if you want to throw Chicago and LA in there too, with the Capitals, it's wide open. I mean, how many teams are out of it right now? 4, 5, if you want to go that far. I mean, you have, we've played 50 games, give or take, for teams. Some teams it's like 47, others it's even above 50. But, so generally speaking, we have 30-something games left. Yeah. And there's so many teams that are in it. There's so many teams that believe that they're playoff teams, and they just have to go out and win a couple more games to get right back in the hunt.
Yeah.
I think it's great for the sport because you have all these teams that are playing meaningful hockey that will continue to, at least for another few weeks at least, play meaningful hockey. I'm sure we'll lose a couple as we go on.
Yeah,
but
they'll become the sellers at the
Yeah, but I mean, even then, I don't know how many teams are really going to believe they're sellers at the All-Star break, at the trade deadline. I just love the fact that you can go watch a game, and unless it's one of a couple of teams who are out of it, and even hell, even Buffalo's had some bright spots. Even Toronto is playing much better in terms of just system than they've had. So to me, it just speaks to the talent level in the league, the salary cap being the right thing, and the fact that you can kind of come out of nowhere and make some noise happen. And to me, that's a great thing.
It's a little crazy to me too to see how many teams that we perceived as good have kind of hit the tank here, and vice versa. We talked about Philly, we talked about Anaheim in terms of where they started with, but then also you look at Montreal and the Rangers. I mean, it feels like years ago that Montreal was 9-0 out of the break, right? And it feels like it feels like the Capsters have been sailing right along here this whole season. I mean, the Rangers were the PDO darlings for the first 2 months, and now they're kind of they've righted out here a little bit back in second spot, but it's bizarre to. I mean, Ottawa's offense has fallen off a cliff here all of a sudden. That it's almost hard to find out what each team has. I mean, Dallas has fallen off a cliff here too.
Yeah, they have, and we've talked a little bit about Dallas and what I think that they need to find a way to do if they're going to compete with the big boys in their conference. But we'll see.
Least favorite storyline
for me,
besides John Scott.
I'm actually going to go with the Edmonton Oilers. I thought about this one for a little bit. The fact that the Oilers have stagnated,
You thought McDavid was going to carry them, but
I did, and you know what though? There was a point a few weeks ago when we said if they could win a few games in this stretch, which look, if they even 6 more points, they would be close. That they could have been close enough for him to make this Herculean comeback and carry them kicking and screaming into the playoffs. Maybe it could still happen, but I don't think so.
10 points behind Arizona.
They're too far behind now, but I think the fact that they weren't able to grow with him. Not so much even his own growth, but the team finding their spots, finding what their top 6 is, developing a third and fourth line with him in the lineup and what it brings. The team as a whole was not able to take a step forward because they lost him for so long this year. And it hurts. Also, I mean, I wanted to see the kid play. To me, it's an unfavorite storyline because we're still making the jokes about that they're going to win the lottery. Granted, even if they finished as, the number 9 seed in the West, they could still win it. But the fact is they're going to have a really good chance again. And it's the ongoing joke. But, look, if they get Austin Matthews too, and what are they going to do with all these guys? To me, I just was hoping to see this team start to move forward. I mean, why couldn't they have been the Coyotes this year?
They could have been. They easily could have been, if not for, like you said, if McDavid and like you said, it's no offense to the people from Edmonton, but it's like Siberia of the sports world in terms of the 4 majors. And now you've already put McDavid there. Now you're going to get Austin Matthews there too. It's just on top of Taylor Hall, on top of. Taylor Hall might be the most anonymous superstar in professional sports. The guy's a point-per-game player every year since he's been in the league, and nobody talks about him. So my least favorite storyline is this ongoing Steven Stamkos thing with the Lightning, just because, it obviously is a huge deal, and really the Lightning in general. I love the Lightning. I loved being around them last year. I like John Cooper a lot, but this whole thing with them and Druin and this whole thing with them and Stamkos, will he sign and will he won't sign? And he's liking tweets of the Leafs and he's going to Toronto. So so the fans there are going to, court him. It's like, it's just one of those things. I'm sure it's a lot worse if you're a fan of the Lightning and you're looking at this team, especially lately, who've been probably the hottest team, at least in the Eastern Conference over the past couple of weeks. And they're closing in on a home ice advantage again in the first round, and the prospect of a chance to go back to the Cup Finals. And now, we're talking about is the captain going to stay? Is he going to sign? Is he going to go? We're not going to find out for another 6 months. Is the worst part about this, or 5 months? And unless they win the Cup, we're probably going to hear the speculation all the way through at least to July 1st and probably beyond July 1st. And we've been talking about it now since their season ended last year, really. And then it's going to be Victor Hedman. So, reports indicate he was offered an 8-year deal by the Lightning. He's going to turn it down because it's the same money he's making now. And if the cap's going to go up, he's going to want a bigger piece of the pie. I mean, there's almost no sense talking about it because they're not trading him at the deadline because they're going to the playoffs now. They're not going to – he's not going to agree to a deal without hitting UFA because why would he? Think about it. How many chances does a professional athlete have to pick his or in general, how many times do we have as people, as in adults in our life, to pick how much – to let other people court us and decide how much money they're going to let us make? It doesn't happen very often, especially when you're talking about like $10 and $11 million annually. It just doesn't happen. And it's one of those things that just feels nice as a human being. So I don't begrudge Stamkos at all about it. It's one of these things that's not going away. And, I don't know about you, Dave, but I'm sick of hearing about it.
Yeah, I am too, just because – especially with them not being – I mean, granted, they're back in the playoff picture now, but when they were struggling and you're hearing about it, it's like I want to hear about the positive stuff. I like to enjoy – granted, I know we're ending the show on our most unfavorite thing, so it doesn't make sense. But generally speaking, I like to hear about the good things going on in the league and, not harping on all the bad all the time. And, look, the salary cap is what it is, and if they can't sign him because they know they can't, then so be it. But of course, I'll tell you right now, if he goes into free agency and he goes to Toronto, or the speculation of Toronto, you're going to be so much more sick of it then than you are now. Yeah. Because if it gets even close to the idea that the Toronto can get him, it's just not going to stop.
Well, what about the prospect of them signing him, but also them winning the lottery? Because they're right in the hunt there. And they're going to have, if that happens, then they'll have a top 3 centers of Stamkos, Matthews, and maybe they'll trade Bozak at that point. But Tyler Bozak's having a pretty nice year here.
He is.
And they'll go to a playoff team, and then no one will shut up about the Leafs for the foreseeable future. So but it's good when it's like the Knicks in basketball or it's better when the Leafs are good in hockey because then people are going to talk about them either way. It's just whether they're relevant to talk about. But I'm done. I'm not going to speculate about where Stamkos is going, how much he's going to sign for. I don't want to hear about it until he agrees to a deal, signs a deal to either stay in Tampa or go elsewhere. We can talk about the Lightning, of course, because the Lightning are a lot of fun still. They're coming back into it. But enough with the Stamkos contract stuff.
Yeah, I agree. That will play itself out. But
yeah.
Look, we're getting into the home stretch here. It's going to be fun. We'll be back with you after the All-Star break. We'll have, I'm sure we'll have some comments on the All-Star game though. I'd love to be past that. The way I look at it now is we're in the sprint run from what's coming up is we have the playoffs there, and then look, we have how many? We're gonna be here until June. So for us, it gets to be a little bit grind, but it's gonna be fun. I really think this year, I know you said that the regular season is kind of tapered off now. I still think it's been exciting. I think we're gonna have a really good playoffs this year.
Well, this is the best time of the year because the football is gonna end, and the hockey's gonna jump onto the landscape, and the stretch run, like you said, to the playoffs is really exciting. It's really fun. Every game becomes so much more meaningful. It's really like that February 1st think about it. It's a 2-month sprint now, like you said, to the playoffs. And there's probably, like you said, only like 4 teams that are, 3 in the East. And if you want to say Winnipeg's in it still, maybe. So there's like 3 teams in each conference that are out of it by now. And which means 24 teams for 16 spots. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely, and we will be there with you. We'll be back next week. I'm Dave Turner for Pat Pickens. This is Puck Talk with Pickens and Turner. Catch you later.